All right, well, it's high noon, so we're going to go ahead and get started. My name is Mark West. I want to welcome everyone into the HGA webinar number 96, first one of 2023, and we've got a great program for you today. I'm very excited to have my friend and colleague Mike Wilson with Ducks Unlimited with us today. Mike is the Director of Fundraising and Volunteer Relations for Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. So he's got a very large territory, and he's got over 12 years experience fundraising with Ducks Unlimited. And we're just really thrilled to have you here today, Mike. Why don't you tell us a little bit about DU and your role with them and what they do, and then we'll get into the topic.
Thanks, Mark. Glad to be here. Glad to join in today. Ducks Unlimited has been around for 86 years. Got our start in 1937 during the Dust Bowl era. And we conserve, restore, and manage wetland and associated waterfowl habitats across North America. Those habitats also benefit a number of other species to the tune of about 800 different species. Ducks Unlimited has conserved more than 15 million acres across North America to date. We have projects in every state, every province of Canada, and every major wintering habitats down in Mexico. So we stretch all the way from the North Pole to the Central America. So keeps us busy, and that's pretty much what we are. I'm Mike Wilson. I am the Director of Fundraising for Ducks Unlimited for Region 8, which consists of Texas, Oklahoma, and New Mexico. My main focus is to grow our fundraising efforts in those three states and work with our board of directors on accomplishing those goals.
All right, thanks, Mike. So everyone, our topic for today is event committees and how to set one up, how to recruit volunteers for your event committees, the different roles within that committee and subcommittees. So we've got a lot to unpack today. If you've got any questions, feel free to use the chat or the hand raise. We're excited to have everyone here and look forward to a lively discussion. So, Mike, how many? Let's start off here with some numbers. How many chapters fall under your region?
We have roughly about 300 or so chapters across the three states. That varies year to year. Some drop off, that don't hold an event per se for 1 year, but then pick back up the next year. But roughly it's in that tune of about 300. 150 of those are right here in Texas, and then the other ones are spread out. The majority of the rest are in Oklahoma. All
right. So I know you probably sizes of chapters varies greatly. I know, some of the chapters are quite large and some of them are not, but do you use the same template for the event committees for each chapter?
Sure, yeah. Every chapter is different. I don't think there's a cookie cutter event really out there for our chapters. Most of them tie their name to it, and they want it to be what they want to be. So we give them some reins to allow them to do that within the realms of DU and still representing our brand as Ducks Unlimited and volunteers.
So what does a chapter look like? What are the different roles in the chapter for as far as the event committee goes?
Sure. Yeah. We, just a kind of a brief introduction to our volunteers for the organization. We have roughly about 40,000 volunteers across the nation, and that ranges from your average in the trenches at a local level raising money for the organization, all the way up to our chairman of the board and president of the organization. And so we have a board of directors that solely consist of all volunteers. They do it on their own accord, and they pay for their own way. But that goes all the way from our volunteers all the way up to the top of the ranks. I think from a volunteer standpoint, you really have to find people that support your organization first, right? They've got to be supporters of your mission. They may already be members of your organization if you have a member base. But within the local committees, if you're fundraising with a committee, committees, typically you have that volunteer leader, and that may be called a president or a chairman or a chairman of the board of directors, whatever that title may be. But you got to have that leader. And sometimes some of our chapters actually utilize a chair and a co-chair to split duties, but that also does a couple things. It may allow that co-chairman to follow in the footsteps and become a chairman, and then a co-chairman kind of follows after that. So that's kind of our structure. And they really, their main focus is to lead the group of volunteers. You have a goal, you have a plan, they're executing the plan with their volunteers. They're leading the chapter. The second most important is your treasurer, right? I mean, we're talking about raising funds. We need somebody that's accountable, somebody that's trustworthy, somebody that is knowledgeable about finances, keeping good spreadsheets, and all the stuff that comes in the treasurer. And we really take most of everything else from the committee off the treasurer. His main or her main focus is keeping track of funds, keeping track of expenses, keeping track of income coming in, and we want them solely focused on that. And that's really helped us. And if they do have a little bit of time, they can help solicit some donations and auction items and things like that. But those are definitely the top two that a successful committee would need. Very rarely do we have anybody that does both, right? It's such a busy job on both sides that we want them to take either or. And then under that, I mean, really, you've got we've got some committees that are 5 people, and then we've got some that are 25. So it's really dependent and varies across the whole nation about, do you have enough people to have subcommittees first, right? If you don't, and you recruit enough to do that, then yeah, that may be something to look at. On a small committee, you have more weight on the shoulders of the volunteers. If you have a larger committee, obviously you have some people to spread things out to and delegate. And I think that's probably one of the most important jobs of a chairman is to delegate. A lot of times we see chairmen or chairpersons or presidents that try to take a lot of the load themselves, and they get burnt out real quick.
Yeah, exactly. I've experienced that myself, and I've seen that happen too. So are there any other roles on the event committee that are that you feel are important?
Sure. I mean, like I said, going back to if your committees have the ability and the workforce to have people take on additional responsibilities, someone that is knowledgeable and negotiating your contracts, whether it's food and beverage, venues, we call those arrangements. And so you may have somebody that's the arrangements subcommittee, and they kind of lead that effort. Those everybody else that falls underneath that is kind of a bonus, is the way we see it. And obviously, if you have them, social media, somebody that's really well versed in social media and all the technology that's available and the different platforms that are available out there, that's huge to have, because that's an outlet for advertisement and recruiting, right, for volunteers. So I don't know. You can really drill into that and add subcommittees like a live auction and silent auction committee or an auction committee. If you have larger committees where their focus is to go out and solicit and build, an auction for you, for your event, an auction that may consist of however many items the goal is to have for the silent and the if you're doing a silent auction, and then obviously the live auction if you're doing one of those. And then a raffle, same thing. A raffle committee could be set up to help solicit and items for the raffle if you're doing a raffle and it's legal in your state. I think one of the things that is really important to our organization is memberships, and trying to capture as many memberships as we can through our events. And a lot of that comes through our events. And so having somebody designated at the front door to make sure people are filling out their information so we can capture that information and store it in our database, obviously. That does a couple things. It allows us to advertise to them the next year. And then it also allows us to circle back and try to recruit some of our past attendees to maybe come and help. We know they're coming to support the organization. So that's kind of our target for volunteer recruitment, is to target those supporters and those members that we know already support us.
So I know, DU is unique and with the memberships. But it sounds like what you're saying is you need to collect the contact information for people that are attending your events so that you do have a way to reach out to them in the future and keep in contact with them. That would be very important. So how do you go about recruiting volunteers, committee members? What are some things you do?
Our rule of thumb in DU is recruitment is an everyday, obstacle, if you can call it that, obviously. But we try to encourage recruiting every day, because you never know who you're going to run into on day-to-day instances at work, in your social life. You may find somebody that has like interest or that supports the organization, and so. If you can make that ask to become a volunteer, so we always encourage every day. So I don't know if there's if I go to the local grocery store and I meet someone that's interested in Ducks Unlimited because they're wearing a shirt, and I'm able to recruit them. It doesn't necessarily have to be an event or some large scale recruitment event in order to recruit people. But the first target is obviously those that support your organization, and then past attendees, because they've come, especially those attendees that have been multiple times. First time attendees may not, but that second, third, fourth time you have that same attendee, those are pretty good targets for you.
Okay. What about technology and social media? Do you use that to try and recruit?
Sure. Yeah. We obviously capture those members when they come to our events. And so when we're getting ready to start for the next year, starting to plan, we start targeting recruitment. That's where we start. The event may be in, here we are, January 5th, but the event may be in October. And so leading up, we already have our venue set. We already have our, probably our catering already done. So a lot of the main arrangement side of things has been secured. And so once we have a date to start working towards, then we start recruiting volunteers to help us. And then that, the planning, we try to get volunteers engaged early. If you can get them engaged early and give them something to do and give them some goals to achieve, that usually helps. But we utilize our member list. We utilize our social media page. If your organization has, maybe it has multiple chapters across the nation, or multiple chapters across the state, each one of ours has a social media page that they try to attract people to with content is the driver in social media. If you provide content to your followers, then you always seem to gain more followers. But we use and I'll just use Facebook because that tends to be the most popular for most organizations, but we may pay to have an ad to recruit volunteers. And it may be just a simple solicitation. If you're interested in volunteering, contact this person, or if you're interested in volunteering, email this person, or we may end up having an event that's solely an event that may have 5 or 6 people from the committee already there, and then bring in new committee members or potential committee members there, teach them about the organization, teach them what we do as the organization, what our responsibilities are as a local volunteer, and then ask them, we need help. We need new volunteers for our committee, and you're here tonight knowing that it's a volunteer recruitment. Come help us. And so we'll use social media in that way to really advertise that we're recruiting volunteers. I don't know if there's a specific, hey, we got to do it at this time. There's not a specific time to recruit volunteers, but I mean, it could be, part of your content schedule is, hey, we're going to have this month, we're going to have a volunteer push, and then take a month off, and then the next month another volunteer push. We also use obviously we have a wide range of members that we can recruit from, and so we'll send email blast out through our system to recruit those potentially new volunteers that way.
All right, thanks. Well, let me turn it back to the audience here for a minute. And, are any of you struggling with recruiting, or maybe you're doing something and you're doing well with recruiting? Just go and hit us up in the chat, and let's get some discussion going. Here's Lisa. Do your committee members have a responsibility to bring in sponsorship money?
I would say that varies for our organization. It varies quite a bit. I mean, there's some chapters that ask their committee members to come in and bring certain amounts of sponsorships. That's another committee within a committee. A subcommittee, I guess you will, is a sponsorship subcommittee where they go out and solicit corporate sponsors, or individuals that may, and your sponsor levels may be tiered a little bit. And so using those sponsor levels and having a sponsored committee, you want somebody that can go out, obviously, and isn't afraid to sell, right? They're selling the organization for you and your committee. So you want somebody that is able to do that and has that as a strength. I think that brings up another good point too, is when you have new volunteers come in and they're new to the organization, giving them a specific job to do right out of the gate, give them some responsibility, give them some skin in the game, they tend to stick around a little bit longer. They feel like they've contributed to the organization. They feel like they've become a volunteer, they've done their part to make whatever event or whatever function a success. And so giving them specific jobs, but when you give them specific jobs, make sure you know what their strengths are. If they're in an industry that they can solicit large corporate sponsors, then maybe that's where you lead them to, right? You try to recruit them and play to their strengths, right, and their qualifications. And so we don't want to just give somebody I mean, this is, me talking from a DU platform, is we don't like to just hand a bunch of tickets to a new volunteer and say, hey, go sell 10 tickets. We want to learn from them, know what their strengths are, and then set them up to be successful within the committee.
All right. So Johanna has a question here, and I think you touched on it a little bit there. It's about volunteer retention. She says, I work for a humane society. I feel we go through cycles of increased volunteers, but always fall back to our core group. Any suggestions how to keep them? I guess that's the big question for everybody, isn't it?
It is. And small or large or giant, I think every organization sees that. The turnover for volunteers nowadays is quite large, and we see it at the largest level here in our organization too. And typically, if you have the means and your organization has the means, and if we're talking local, sometimes it can get a little stagnant in the committee and bringing in new people, but not just always doing work, right? Not always, we've got having committee meetings and business meetings, but also trying to encourage those local committees to become friends outside of DU business or organization business. Is grow that friendship, right? It's all about building those relationships within those volunteers. And if you can do something outside of business meetings as a group, and it could be just a get together to watch a football game, or go pick up trash, some other function to bond and build those relationships within the committee. A strong committee typically is successful.
So, yeah, that's a great answer. It sounds like what you're saying is all work and no play wears everybody out. You need to have a little fun with your committee members and your volunteers. Something that's not just meeting after meeting after meeting, but social events. Yeah, I know I was telling Mike before we got started, I'm the president of our local chapter of my alumni association, and we go through these cycles as well. I mean, there's years past when we had lots of people showing up for events, and then you go through dry spells where it's difficult to get a handful of people to show up for a happy hour. And I think one of the other things is communication. You need to keep regular communication with your volunteers and your committee members. Some sort of email, something, just to keep them in the loop of what's going on. Because I know, talking to other chapter presidents, they see a definite fall off in attendance at events when they don't send out that weekly or bi-weekly email, just to keep people in the loop. Do y'all do anything like that, Mike, as far as keeping communications going?
Yeah, we tend to do that on a more state level, a larger scale. We don't really drill into our state chairman here in Texas, and within the region, really. They'll tend to send updates out, just to the volunteers, right? Not to a large scale of membership, but to really just reach out and give them an update on, how the we're talking on a large scale, right? How the state is doing from a fundraising, what's working, what's not working, things like that. But they, I don't know, most chapters will send some notes out, but to keep them engaged. One of the best things that, and then I guess this goes back to adding somebody to your committee, is having a secretary that can take minutes for people that can't make the meeting that week, to stay in the loop. And then if that's something that you want to get into, that would help, right? You could take some of those meeting notes and highlight those. And I'll tell you another thing that's really good within the volunteer ranks is, as a volunteer leader, whether that be a president or a chair for the local chapter or the organization, is to highlight those volunteers that have made a significant solicitation, or had landed a nice sponsorship for the chapter, and highlighting those volunteers and what they've accomplished. It kind of creates a little competition within that committee as well, and it also gives them an accolade in front of their peers too.
Yeah, great point. Callie has a question. What does orientation look like for volunteers? How often, and do you have in-person or virtual orientation? That's a great question. What do you do once somebody says, okay, I want to be a volunteer? How do you get them started?
Usually, if we're recruiting volunteers, kind of our way of thinking is, we want to be at a position in the planning stage of an event to recruit that volunteer, and then immediately invite them to the committee meeting right away. So, if we have a committee meeting that happens the first Tuesday of every month, I'm going to try to have my recruitment event a week before that meeting, in order to invite them back to that meeting and get them engaged right away. And so there's really, I wouldn't say there's no formal orientation. A lot of times, most of the time, I would say, we have volunteers that come that already know the ins and outs of Ducks Unlimited from a 30,000 foot view, and they may have questions that some of our volunteers can answer within the local chapter, but we don't really do a formal orientation for every volunteer. Now, when you get to the board level, obviously there's some orientation stuff that goes there, but that's way up the chain from what we're kind of focused in on here. Okay.
And I just want to make a distinction here. We're talking today about event committees versus a board of directors, because they're two very different things. The question earlier about being responsible for raising money. Well, all board members, that's a responsibility of them, but it may not be for committee members. So just keep that in mind. I think that's an important distinction to make, because the roles are very, very different. So you've got your committee members in place. Things are rolling along. What are some things you can do to keep people happy, keep harmony in the group? I think the outside events are a great way, team building, if you want to call it that. But do you have some other things that you try to do to keep people happy?
Yeah, if I had the answer, I would I would sure share it. I think you're always going to get some conflict of personalities, but if you're the president or the chair of your local event, I think that's a good quality of your leadership, is to be able to manage different personalities and play to those strengths, and really diffuse dust ups or anything like that that may come up. But I think you have to understand that each volunteer brings value to your event, no matter if it's somebody, everybody has different schedules. Everybody has different work obligations. Some can't make every meeting, but they've already told you that they will be there the day of your event to help you whenever you want, with whatever you want, set up, calling auctions, writing receipts, checkout, whatever that may be. They have committed that one day to you. They just don't have the time to make every meeting that you may have. So you have to weigh that, right? Well, he can't be there or she can't be there for every meeting, but man, we're going to have an extra set of hands for our event. That's a volunteer in our eyes. And
for sure,
everybody has different schedules. And I think even more so now than 20 years ago, that schedules are even more busy than they were probably back then. And so we try to accommodate as much as we can. And so a lot of the dust ups that tend to happen is, well, this person's not pulling their weight, and we're calling them a volunteer, but they're not doing anything, and so on. And so some of that can be diffused by, well, they're here, they just can't be at every meeting. And the other thing is, don't overcommit. As a volunteer, don't overcommit and under serve, right? So dust ups are a touchy subject. A lot of personalities go into that, and I think if as a leader you have to understand those personalities, and everybody's microphone tune's a little different, and so you have to be able to, as a leader, tune those microphones just a little bit different, and try to not only see those type of dust ups come before they hit.
Good word there. So let me ask you this. We touched on it a little bit actually before we got started, and that is recruiting younger volunteers. I know my alumni chapter, we struggle with this. We're skewed probably. Our youngest active member is, might even be me, and I'm 59. So what are you doing to try and recruit younger volunteers?
Sure. Yeah. That's a struggle for everyone, I think. I don't know if it's cultural or, the culture of volunteering has kind of been put aside, and it's kind of put on the back burner. But we have a tough time recruiting. That I would say that 35 to that 25 to 35 range. And I don't know what the reason is. Maybe there's a lot of growth in their families or their careers, and that their focus is right then isn't on volunteering. And so, but one of the things that we've done is went into like universities and recruited committees to start university chapters for our mission. And so, we may have a Texas A&M Ducks Unlimited chapter that they're recruiting our volunteers. We're hoping that those volunteers that are at a university level, when they get introduced to Ducks Unlimited at that level, then hopefully when they settle down in their careers or settle down with their family, then they'll come back to us, wherever that may be. And in our case, we typically have chapters from a wide range across the nation. And so no matter where you're at, we probably can plug you in pretty close to a chapter in one of the states. So that's kind of where we put our focus, and we've actually drilled it all the way down into the high school level with our varsity program. where high school chapters are actually raising money for Ducks Unlimited's mission, and they are becoming leaders at universities that may not have a chapter or are part of the succession of an existing chapter. And then we're seeing them slowly but surely fold back in to our adult volunteer ranks.
Awesome. So, even if your organization, if you don't have a chapter model, there's ways you can I guess think outside the box and find ways to connect with younger people. And I know from personal experience, it's just something you really have to commit to and work hard at, because it is important to have some younger blood in there.
Mark, I'll add to that, Mark. Yeah. If your event or your local organization, if we're talking outside of the chapter, realm here, and we're drilling into your specific organization, I would say if you do have someone that is young and that's active in your committee, maybe lean on them to go out and help you sell it to some of their peers and get them to help, right? Use that youth to recruit youth.
Yes, absolutely. I know some of the larger Texas Exes chapters, they actually have young member events, happy hours and whatever. And judging from what I see on social media, they do have people in that age range coming to these events. So it is possible. So, maybe you have to do something that's more targeted towards the younger demographic. Does anybody in the chat have any experience with that? And anyone able to recruit new members, younger members? Please share what you're doing with the rest of the group. Oh, hey, thanks, Doug. Doug Barron says a good resource for younger volunteers is the local National Charity League. This is a mother-daughter organization and has always been willing to volunteer. Oh, that's a great resource. I had never heard of that organization before. We'll have to look and see if there's a chapter in your area. I know other organizations have used church groups. My daughter's young adult group has served at various charity events as volunteers. I know some organizations are able to use, Boy Scout troops, Girl Scout troops, things like that to get people involved. Johanna says, we have what we call Bright Futures. There are students interested in becoming veterinarians, etc., that can come intern with us. See, that's fantastic. That's a great way to make a connection with younger people. Beth says, contact local schools, community colleges, etc. Many scholarship winners need service hours to keep their funding. There you go. That's another great resource. Lots of great info here. Tiffany says they also have chapter of the Young Men Service League where mother and sons volunteer. Super. Well, we're going to send out the recording from this, and we'll include all of these organizations, and I'm sure we can find the links to their websites, and you can go and see what you can find there. Because some of those may turn into long-term relationships. Somebody shows up to get some hours for their scholarship, and they just fall in love with your organization and stay. That's fantastic. So let's talk about the event itself for a minute. Most of the organizations we work with have some sort of a gala or a banquet. what kind of a timeline do you use for planning and executing an event? How far out do you start putting your committee together, and what does that look like?
Sure. Yeah. I would say our planning for the next event, if you had an event already, our next event is being planned right after that, with the booking of the venue. Venues, with depending on how large your event is, venues are highly sought after by weddings and other parties and other fundraisers, and so getting on the books early is key. That does a couple things. It secures your date, but then you have something to start working towards. Then you can start really planning when the event is. One of the things that we try to do is keep a consistent date time frame. And it may be like the first Saturday of December, or the first Tuesday in October, whatever that is, and then you kind of use that year after year in your planning. We know that we're going to be the first Tuesday in October, and that's what we're going with. And over time, if you're going to do consecutive events, and it's going to be an annual type of event, that does a couple things. It allows people to recognize first Tuesday of October is this event every year, and we're going to plan to be there every year. And so it does that. So right out of the gate, after the first event or after the annual event, we're already looking forward to booking. And if the catering, if some of the vendors that we use are ideal for our event, then we try to book them right away and go ahead and secure those and get them off our plate. Because most of the time we can just say, hey, look, put us down again for this date next year. And a lot of that stuff is planned before you even start meeting, and you can just really update the committee like, hey, after the event, this is what we did. And so, but when you really kind of get into, after you select your date, I would, every event's a little different, right? And every committee's a little different size. And so if you only got a few people on your committee that are putting on a large scale event, then you may have to start a little earlier. If you have a lot of people and a lot of bodies beating bushes around town to garner support and garner attendees and donations, then you might be able to start a little bit later in the game. But I don't know, that sweet spot would probably be in that 15 to 20 week range. I would say,
Okay.
if once you really, once you've got your date set, and then that gap between the last event and that 20-week time frame, then you may start doing some recruitment in that time frame, getting the committee back together. That long layover is good, but having some socials in that time too will help.
Yeah,
keep people together.
Yeah. Okay. So you're saying about 4 to 5 months out is when you, depending on your committee size, but somewhere in that range is when you would start having regular event meetings.
Yeah, and those could be tiered too, Mark. I mean, that's probably, like I said, if the committee's a little smaller, they could meet less. With the age of iPhones and text, and you can stay in communication with a smaller group easily. With a larger group, you may have to have more formal meetings. Mm-hmm. Keeping those meetings less frequent, later in the game, you might stack them. We probably do once a month. I would say the average committee probably does once a month for the first 3 months, and then every 2 weeks they'll start to tear it down as they get a month out. Then they're meeting those next 4 weeks to prepare.
Okay, all right. And what about post-event? I'm sure you do event wrap-ups. What do those look like? And when do you have it?
And I tell you, the sooner you have it, the better. But we were talking about recruitment, volunteer recruitment. One of the best places to recruit volunteers is at the event. And, if you've already got the supporters in one room, they're trapped. You can send somebody around to, talk to people, and it may be part of your committee. If you have a large committee, you may delegate 2 or 3 people to walk around and really solicit volunteers, or even have a sign-up table to volunteer at your event. But taking those names and then your committee names, I would say as soon as the financials are done for your event, then call everybody back and have a celebration. Celebrate the funds that you were able to raise for your mission, and then be as transparent as possible and say, hey, this is how we did. This is what I call it: the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's talk about the good, what happened that was great. And then let's talk about some stuff that we could change for the next year's event. And then there may be some things that you want to do away with completely that just did not work. And so but having an informal get together to discuss those is usually best, it seems like. Make it fun. If the event was a success, then celebrate that success. That's how we do it. So it varies, but the sooner the better after the event, because everything's fresh on the committee's mind. You're not having to think back 2 or 3 months about what happened in the auction, or what happened in the silent auction, or what happened at the front door with checking people in, and so forth. So that's kind of the model that we kind of go after. And there's some chapters in our organization that just don't do it. It's just they'll share the financials with the group, and they just don't get together, and that just works for their committee, and that's totally fine with us.
Yeah, everybody's different, aren't they? So we're getting close to wrapping up. Any more questions for Mike? Now's your chance. I think we've had a great discussion today, and I hope this has been beneficial for you. We had our largest webinar registration we've ever had for this topic. So I know it's something everyone struggles with. So all right, so we've got a winner for the travel item we're going to give away. And the winner is Taylor Hendrickson with Hope Connections for Cancer. Congratulations, Taylor. All right. Yeah, you bet, man. You bet. So I want to thank Mike once again for coming on. I know he's uber busy, and this is really special having someone of his caliber with us to kick off 2023. And so thank you, Mike. Appreciate you, brother. And we'll be sending out the recording, and we'll have some other information in there for you, some links and such that were in the chat. And my email will be in there. So if you've got any further questions or something you want to follow up, please don't hesitate. Hit me up. I'm always happy to help. And any other questions? Anybody with any other questions? Otherwise, we'll go ahead and we'll let everybody go about 10 minutes early. Any last words, Mike? Any last words of wisdom?
No, sir.
Sounds like
I appreciate the opportunity to come and share some of what Ducks Unlimited, and share our story, share our brand with people that may not have known about Ducks Unlimited before. So,
all right, thank you. So I guess one of the main takeaways I got from this is what Mike said right at the very beginning, is basically always be recruiting. Always, be looking for volunteers, for people to connect with your organization. and keep people in the pipeline. So, all right. Well, thank you, everyone. And have a great rest of your week and a great 2023. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye-bye.